Both had this experience of we're following the breadcrumbs. That's how we say it. We're not the ones putting the breadcrumbs in front of us. We're the ones we're just being obedient to, hey, there's a next step. Hey, there's a next step. Because with any of this, we don't know what we're doing. We never did.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And today we're going to talk with my friend Sean. Sean's life has been one of entrepreneurship and inventiveness, and as he moves through his own iterations and his own incarnations of entrepreneurship, another type of life revealed itself to him. And as he says, he follows a breadcrumb of what to do next, kind of looking up towards a higher power to see how his life can unfold. He's made an amazing transition later in his career and later in his life that he's going to discuss, and it's driven by a sense of purpose and a sense of what can I do to make the world around me a better place in a small way. You're going to love this conversation. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. All right, Sean Daly, welcome in.
Hey, I'm Sean Daly, and I'm 56. I live with my wife, our daughter, and our German Shepherd. We have 5 children total, ages as of today, 22, 22, 21, 20, and 12. I was born.
Gosh.
Yeah, I was born in Philly. I now live in Nice, France, in the Côte d'Azur, and I work as the CEO and founder of a marketing data company called Lead Eagle.
Wow. I'm trying to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children.
Yeah.
Wow. And also too, at these different stages, right? Your 22-year-olds right on this cusp of young adulthood, your 12-year-old right on the cusp of teenagerhood.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way to parent, because I'm assuming you have to be a different parent to your young adults than you are to your preteen.
Very much so. I guess the good news is we had lots of practice already. So, at least for the 12-year-old, she benefits. But with the oldest adult children, that's kind of a new adventure, and I'm really enjoying it. But it's a different phase.
It is. Now, who's with you all in Nice?
So it's my wife and our 12-year-old daughter. The
12-year-old is in Nice.
Yeah.
So for your young adults, then I'm assuming they're states.
Yeah,
stateside.
Exactly. They're in California, and then one of them is going to school at the University of Washington in Seattle as of this semester. Actually, she just started.
Oh wow! Congratulations. So, how did they respond to you guys moving halfway across the world?
I'm still trying to figure that out, Chris. I'm like, are you really okay? Is it really okay? Today was a bit of a hard day for my wife. Actually, she pre-processed it a few days ago. I said as of today, 22. That's because one of our daughters, turned 22 today, and that was tough. That was the first kid birthday that happened since we lived here. So that was challenging for my wife. And but you asked me about the kid side of it. They seem to be doing okay. I think that they don't really let on, 100% how they're really feeling. It's a process for all of us. We're all going through this process together, and it's just multi-layered and it's complex, and we're fresh. We're 6 months into it. So really, really still pretty raw and developing, but so far so good. We're sort of trying to achieve this harmonic balance internally here because we have the micro family here, right? The French
Sure.
installation, and then we have, the kids that we left behind there, who have, obviously they're all very different, and they're all at different stages of their independent adulthood development, in terms of how far are they off the launch pad, how
Right.
natively are they independent, and what kind of support do they need. That's a different answer for each of them. So yeah, it's been an interesting and exciting adventure, but we're really just in the middle of it.
That is true, and it's one of the it's an interesting stage because I don't think you could prepare for it.
No, absolutely not. Could not prepare for it. Couldn't imagine it. I think that you don't imagine the more difficult parts of it. You think about the fun parts, of course, right? You think about,
Hmm.
baguettes on the sea, and the excitement of getting to live in another culture. But yeah, that part you really just you go through it. We have other sort of expat folks that we know here that we've met that we can commiserate with to some degree, but I think everybody discovers on their own. I have a pretty well followed TikTok channel that I started as part of this journey. And much to my surprise, I had a video go viral and 1.2 million views and gained like 40,
Wow.
yeah, 40,000 followers who have followed our family's journey. And it's been crazy. I mean, it really was not my intention. I was just kind of playing around TikTok. Next thing I knew, I had this like massive following of people who are hanging on our every sort of day of like, what's happening now? And a lot of people who've been inspired by our journey and so forth. But that's been a really actually great source of meeting friends out here,
Hmm.
resources. In fact, I was just about half hour before this recording this. Was on a phone call with one of my followers who was giving my wife and I invaluable information about passport and visa issues that we're running into. That just we have some complexities that are occurring right now. And this woman was just so kind. She called. She and her husband live not too far from us here. And so anyway, that's been a really interesting element of this is this whole TikTok thing happening in parallel. And I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an interesting community that you build virtually, but then it pulls into an actual physical community of helpers. And I guess I'm curious, Sean, because you've got some precious time with your 12-year-old. And if you didn't go, you know, to France and you were stateside, your kids who are older in college are kind of tooling around, are kind of orbiting, right? They're still around, but you'd still have a precious time with your younger daughter, just the three of you. But it seems like that's precious time is even I don't know, deepened or accelerated or more concentrated because you're so physically removed from the other siblings, right?
Oh, wow. Well, so you hit the nail on the head there. And actually, so that's actually got multiple layers to it. So there's the part you're rightly pointing out, which is that, well, there's also a part you don't know, which is we moved from a fairly large space, like a 3,300 square foot home, to I don't know what it is in square feet. I haven't measured it, but it's something like a 60, 65 square foot apartment. And it's a very intimate space, which this
Oh,
three, yeah, the dynamic of this three can do that. But that was part of this journey was to at least immediately really downsize and just like get rid of the stuff. And so
hmm.
back to the connection with the 12-year-old, it's put us in a closer space together. Mom and myself and her. There's also the massive leap of, for the first time ever, living in another culture. Yes, as you said, like away from the siblings, away from the support network, away from the aunts and uncles, all of that. So we have to lean on each other more heavily, and they hurt certainly with us. So in that, just observing how we've gotten to see how strong she is. Not that we didn't know
Hmm.
before, but she's gotten to show new levels of courage and strength. And it's funny because we've always traveled, the three of us together, because the adult kids have been gone for some time. And we've always had a really good thing. We've always traveled well together, the three of us, and we just have a cool thing going with us. And it's very different because she's, the last one, the last kid. But this has added a new dimension to that because we have to go through things together, like getting her into it. She just completed her first week of school in France, going to school in a French school. Yeah, which was administratively, the French are famous for a little bit of insanity with like it's very strict and everything. It's going quite well, but just we all kind of went through that together, and I was nervous about it, because I knew it could be difficult for her. She's a sensitive child. She's very empathic and sensitive, and so I was like, I was worried, but we really trusted that would work out okay, and we worked on it together. She just finished her first week, and she's doing about 1,000% better than I would have ever expected in my wildest dreams.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what a confidence boost builder for her. Whatever she does for the rest of her life, right? No one can ever take this experience away and what it does for her. And I have to imagine too that at 12, man, what a powerful experience to have before you become a teenager.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool too, because I feel like so much of what happened with the other kids, because we were living in the United States and California, and a lot of known quantities were happening there, right? Just because we've all sort of seen it. Not to say they didn't have unique experiences that we didn't have, but I get to watch my daughter with this admiration of like, you're doing something that I never did. It was never even on the radar screen. And you're doing it with grace and style. And so my level of admiration for her, which was already high, has gone to a new level because she's just handling it with, with just such aplomb. So yeah, that's been really
That's
cool.
very cool. And also she's also watching how you guys are handling it. So, clearly from a career perspective, you are able to do this, right? Work remotely, and you're the CEO of your own software company. And it's interesting because clearly, as you have an entrepreneurial streak in you, and I would think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this built-in ability to adapt and thrive in changeable environments.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've always had. I was the one who left the East Coast and moved out to California with no support network really to speak of. And I was willing to do that. And my dad just looked at me and was like, "Are you sure? Like, you want to do this? Like, what are you doing?" and I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I can do it." So I'm able to do it. As a father, and as a husband, I have to look at it. It's equally important to me that they thrive too, the two of them in this.
Right.
And so that's been I knew I'd be fine, because I've done that. I've thrown myself off so many cliffs and had to, survive those jumps. And I enjoy that. And that's part of what keeps life interesting for me, but it's different. Everybody's different in that sense. So I've been talking about our daughter, 12-year-old, but, really the same extent as my wife, even in some ways more so than my wife. Because what I didn't mention is that, our daughter has been going to French immersion school in California, which we were very lucky to have in our town as a public charter school, believe it or not,
Nice.
since maternelle, which is preschool. So she's literally gone to a French immersion school in California for the last 8 years. So that part of the transition for her to go to a French school in France is not as big of a leap as it is for my wife to move to France, where she did not speak a lick of French. So she moved to French society bravely. And I said to her, "Are you sure? Like, you want this?" Because we've been talking about this for several years, but intensively over the last 18 months, prior to now. And I just said, "Are you, she can do this?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, so she's always been my adventure companion. Like I really admire her in that way, because again, I get to look and say, "I'm not sure I'd do that." I know the language first before I felt comfortable doing it. So I have, and she's here, every day. She studies French every single day now. We got her a good course.
That's great.
And, she's it's difficult, but and she's starting to ask us to immerse her, which is good. I said, when you're really ready to go here, you're going to do something really hard, and it's going to be, you're going to tell us to speak to you in French all the time, or all day. and it's going to be,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to suck for you. It's going to suck for you. But you're
for
going
a
to get
bit, and then she'll get through it. It's an interesting thing, Sean, because you know, I would imagine that raising five kids and they've all your children see the parents in their careers. They see them day in day out doing what they're doing for work, and your parents had your kids of seeing you as a parent, as an entrepreneur and a parent, are watching you change and adjust, start new companies, exit new companies, start other companies. Is this now part of the fabric of your whole family? Does your whole family have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit?
So it's funny because it doesn't take with everybody, and that was also that's been true with other people I've seen where there's an entrepreneurial parent or parents, and it seems like there's a nature and nurture element to me in my like very casual, non-scientific observations of this. So the answer to your question, the answer to your question is one, the oldest. Yes, he's definitely got the entrepreneurial spirit thing, although he still kind of goes back and forth. But ultimately, I'm pretty confident he's going to go that path. He's already done it a few times, and so it's he has some other constraints on him that are kind of causing him to have to be an employee currently. But I think he's going to end up there because of the freedom elements, which I think was my number one always was the need for freedom and the desire for the freedom. And then I'd say that the other boy, our other son, I think it's funny. We were just talking about the other day. He's not there. He's working for Disney right now. I think long term it's going to be a good thing for him, and I'd like to see him end up there. But the book has yet to be written on that for him because it would suit his current his needs and his lifestyle needs and other things. But I don't think he's connected those dots. So that's a work in progress. And then the two other daughters we have. I'm not sure yet. That I'm not really, yeah. So I'm watching that evolve because they're not sort of just going, I got to do what dad did. And we've always supported
Right.
them in being exactly who they are. So I don't know. Chris, I'm going to be really honest here. This is a bit like a raw thing for me to admit, but I sometimes question, I'm not quite sure whether I should have drilled it in more as like the way to go because I don't want to project too much of myself onto them. For me, it is definitely the only way. And I could argue from an objective standpoint that I think it's a really good idea for the vast majority of people who want to own their time, who want to have no financial ceiling and things like that. But then the other side of it is that everybody's different. Some people just want to pick up a paycheck and they're okay with that life. And there's no shame in that. I'm not judging that. So I've had to respect their individuality at the same time saying, just in case you're interested in this, I'm going to tell you that I will support you in it. I will train you in it. I will help you start the business. I will, foster you in that process. But if you don't do it, it's okay too. It's kind of the opposite of what happened with my dad when he was like, why are you going to start your own, like, again, because he's a company man. He was always a company man and he did very well in his career as a hotel general manager. But, yeah, so it's just interesting. I think it's just the eternal cycle between children and parents that this happens.
Well, I wanted to ask that because you had mentioned that you said you left Philly for California. Your dad was like, "Are you sure you're going to do this?" And I guess when you observed your own father and his career, clearly that had an influence for you to decide that you were going to strike out your own path.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that, whether my observations of my dad's career had a direct impact. I think I've always thought that it was more about just my own sort of personal sensibilities and desires and tolerances, because I've always been so stubbornly independent and just, very high energy, very passionate, very like, just basically not going to fit into anybody else's mold. And I kind of have to make my own way. I've always been very headstrong in that way. But I suppose if I think about it, if I reflect on it a little bit, I did observe a dad who was a workaholic. He retired a few years ago at like 78. And he loves people. And he's the only hotel general manager I've ever met that knew his guests by name. Like he would know their first names.
Oh.
And I mean, this is in Hilton's and Marriott's. You just don't find this, right? He's cut from a different cloth. But the price that we all paid for that was that, when we saw dad, there was two times we saw dad. We'd go to the hotel for the restaurant and have dinner with him during the week, maybe once or twice. And then we would, luckily he coached us in sports. My brother and I, he
Good.
coached us in like every sport possible, like basketball and, football and baseball and soccer and everything. So we got to see him on the weekends, and then practice, during the week in the spring and things like that for baseball. But, I think maybe seeing that, I definitely knew, especially once I had children, I think I started realizing the real value of what I had created for different reasons. The new dimension was born of appreciation. And that one actually has been the reigning king of my appreciation now for many years since I had kids, which is you get to walk your kids to school every day. You get to choose the times you have with them, go on vacations with them when you want and all that. Because I love my children so much, like, all parents do. I've been able to, and I during COVID, Chris, obviously COVID was terrible and a lot of bad things came from it, but I was privately celebrating COVID from the sense that I saw so many parents for the first time get to work from home and actually spend time with their kids. And I had so many people telling me how it was changing their lives. And I just smiled to myself and was just like, I'm so glad you got to join that club, because it's you feel a little guilty sometimes, right?
Yeah, I feel guilty for being so blessed, right? And what's, you said a couple of things that I find really interesting. You said, your dad was a company man earlier, and that in itself is a box and a path, and it doesn't surprise me now that when you chose entrepreneurship, because you said earlier, what you love about it is that you create your own time, right? As an entrepreneur, and as a company man. Anyone who's a company man does not create their own time. The company creates the time for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In addition, you don't own your time, and you're always looking to level up, and leveling up means more sacrifice. So in my dad's case, he moved. I lost count. I believe it was 11 times in 9 years or something like that. It was absolutely like the number of moves was greater than the number of years over a decade. Because he was always saying, yeah, I'll go open the new hotel. Because that was the thing, is to be the opening GM, open the property. And that was the way to bump salary, bump benefits, things like that. But, you sacrificed to do that. So I saw him do that and really sacrifice all that. But, he has my stepmother, with him, she was willing to do that. So she was his compatriot, and they bopped around and did that together, and they enjoyed that together. And they did have a son together, my half brother. And so they actually had him at sort of the tail end of that, so that he wasn't too badly affected. He wasn't uprooted. He was able to go to school in one place. So that was good for him. But what I did observe was, at one point my dad had, he was with a management company because it was a franchise, not corporate. And he ended up in one of these 11 moves or whatever it was, between 9 and 11. He ends up somewhere in Texas, and I won't name names, but he ends up working as the franchise GM for a particular large property there that is owned by a large hat, cowboy boot wearing, sort of old. I mean, this guy looked a stogie, the whole thing, right? And he just did not like my dad, which is unusual because my dad's like a total people person. Everybody loves my dad, but somehow this guy, they just had a personality clash. And he made sure that my dad got railroaded and booted out of the company for having really done nothing at all. Just because of personalities. He exercised his. So what I watched was my dad lose his entire career that he had bled for and given up so much for, over some guy not liking him and with no merit behind it. And he didn't even get the gold watch. He got nothing. And he started over again. I remember him sending his resume out at whatever age he was at the time. I mean, he was older than I am now. And I think maybe he was mid-50s, maybe the age I am now. And I just thought to myself, wow, man, that just really reaffirms the whole work for yourself thing, write your own destiny.
We'll be right back. Write your own destiny. No, so you've done. I've met some and spoken with a lot of entrepreneurs, and actually, one of my guests, Lars Hegelson, was on my show, and he's an entrepreneur. Started a company called Green Rope.
Oh, I know that
Interesting guy.
CRM. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah,
awesome
he's great.
software.
Yeah, it's a great software. But for him, he created this business as an entrepreneur, but he's also creating a family within the business, right? It's really important to him to have that stability that he created for his employees as well. And he's stuck with the one business, like, he and the brand are one, kind of like King Arthur, right? You and the land are one.
Right.
So like he's just with that. Your journey though was interesting because you've done multiple startups and you're coming in and out. And I guess a question I have for you, Sean, is there are different flavors of entrepreneurs. Some entrepreneurs, create their own brand and stick with. Some do multiple iterations. Why do you think that you do these iterations? It's almost like shedding skin and growing skin and shedding skin and creating that rhythm.
So I had somebody say to me once, you remind me of Madonna. You reinvent yourself like every 10 years or something. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. This is like 20 years ago or something. But yeah, I think younger Sean was doing it because I've always been like interested in the cutting edge of technology, of whatever's happening. I started as a technologist. I went to school for computer science. I became a network, Microsoft certified systems engineer, number 600 in the world, and got into Windows NT before anybody knew what it was. And so I started like on the cutting edge of a fast moving industry. And that really excited me. And I loved that. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think like I figured out I exited my companies. I don't know if this is coincidence or there's some like magic behind it, but either 5.5 years or 11 years have been my exits, which is a divide multiplies, divides evenly. So
That's hilarious.
That's strange. That was not intentional, but so I don't know if it's like there's the 7-year itch, maybe there's a 5.5-year itch for the entrepreneurially, but that seems to be like what's happened in the past. I don't project my current or my future with what happened with the past, because I've noticed a lot of changes in myself, like really profound changes in the way I think about things. But historically speaking, that's where it was. It was always about, hey, it's just time. I think I'm an early stage guy. Like I'm the one who wants to found it. I want to go through the grind. I want to build it up. I want to build the processes. And then I want somebody to come in and then do the maintenance phase, which I find boring, which is that second phase growth, which is great. Know thyself, right? So for me, that's my power band. Like that's where I want to be. I do an exit after that period of time, and then somebody else comes in and adds to what I've built. And I'm happy to say that all my companies that I've started over the last 37 years now are all still alive and running. So none of them are.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on you. It's an interesting journey of where someone's a founder, an entrepreneur, and then there's the next stage where entrepreneur moves to CEO, and then CEO moves to figurehead. It's like you're in that entrepreneur stage, and then when you're just on the cusp of CEO, where you've got to run crap, right? I've got to talk with people. I've got to do marketing, operations, finance, sales, blah, blah, blah. You're like, okay, I'll leave that to somebody else and go back to entrepreneur. Because that's really where the pool that you thrive in.
Exactly.
So you just mentioned some profound changes in the way that you're thinking now versus younger Sean. Can I ask, what are some of those profound changes? I'm curious.
I would put at the top of the list is really my faith and the work that I'm doing alongside my wife with our nonprofit in Kenya. That's our primary mission. We started working in Kenya in just before COVID, actually. And so I'm the CEO as well of a 501c3 called Loving Home Ministries, which is, its primary mission is working with basically children and families in Kenya. We work with, I will say, basically street kids. So there's true orphans and also just kids that are getting support, primarily in Nairobi right now. And that I think has just changed. That's just changed my heart. So the trickle down from that is just that I am looking to balance between not only my family, but also spending my time and my brain and my energy on that work as well. So yeah, that's just become a big part of our lives. And I think that what I've shifted towards is in terms of the for-profit sort of 9 to 5, self-created work that I do. that work, I look to have highly leveraged, high levels of delegation to others, make sure that the role I'm playing is uniquely me and needs to be, and there isn't any, well, I'll just do it, right? I just make sure that it's really
Mm-hmm.
only the parts that I'm enjoying, that I'm built for, that I'm truly contributing and require me. And then spend the rest of the time on these other pursuits and try to balance it all. Really, it's become this balancing act between that, because what is not okay for me anymore is to just work in a for-profit sense in my company and only do that. I need to do that because obviously I need to make money like everybody else, but to just be swallowed or consumed by that blindly does not work for me anymore, because I would sacrifice something very valuable if I did that.
That's wonderful. And that's, I like your expression of where you said it's of a change of heart, right? Because sometimes people think different thoughts and they change their thinking and they change habits, right? But when you talk about changing heart, it's very hard to not change after that transition. It's almost like this leap of faith. It's almost like this spiritual push, and rewinding from that becomes almost impossible. So it seems to me that, when you have this change of heart, then the whole arc of the rest of your life changed, because it wasn't any longer solely about creating a company, getting the valuation, exiting, living on a yacht, buying more companies, etc. It's almost like your whole arc moved towards service.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it even surprised me. And it happened like a lightning bolt. Like it was just bam. The first time I went, I think I just had never engaged in that type of service work before, like just working in service to other people. I mean, I'd done various things, but like that was a deeper, more intense level to work with those kids. And I get to talk. I talk to them every couple of weeks, and we just did a call with them last weekend and everything. And they're just they're part of our family. And there's the plight of so many people. I work with homeless people here in Nice, where we are, and my TikTok channel has actually created a lot of awareness and created some donations for people that are living on the streets here. And I've gotten to know several of the people here, and it's just I think we live our lives and we're so blessed. You talked about being blessed earlier. I think we're doomed. Many people are doomed to forget their blessings. Um, we talk about it like, oh man, I'm living blessed. It's like, no, I mean, you're really like we're so blessed. And I think it's important for us to just not overlook the plight of other people. And it's not about throwing money at people. It's about empowering them. When I look at Kenya and the people that I know there, which now is like in the hundreds, right, of people that I've met and got to interact with regularly over the last 4 years, they're so hungry for information. Like they would be overjoyed to have had the access to the information and the education that we took for granted growing up in high school and college
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, and just through the internet and the availability of those types of services where we just have that in a first world country. So I think it's like now the question I've asked myself in recent years is how can I take all that entrepreneurial spirit, that just those characteristics that make me who I am, how can I then bring that to them? Like, what can I do to create opportunity to help them lift themselves up? Like, where do I do that? And sometimes the answer is
Right.
awkwardly. And then sometimes the answer is no, that's a really good alternate application of that skill set that you have, Sean, or that
Sure.
access you have. Sometimes it's not a skill set. Sometimes it's just that I know people, right? Or I know, I can make a connection that can change a life. And so why wouldn't I do that? Like it seems criminal to me
Right.
not to do that, right? So
Right. Well, and
yeah,
also too, it's interesting, because now you're touching on things like privilege and, the privilege of experience. And yes, you're a self-made man in terms of your own entrepreneurship, but there was privilege before that to have, a father and a job that he had, and so you felt comfortable and confident moving across the country. And I'm thinking more about this lately, about the responsibility of privilege, right? So what is it now that you are responsible for besides your own self because you are so privileged, right? What is either the calling, the call to serve, or the true civic/global responsibility each of us have to give all that they can to the widest number of people who can receive that gift?
Yeah, that's well put. And I think that we all have these, unique gifts that when we start looking at alternate applications for them, you start to find where you can really, it's almost like you start understanding your purpose at a better level, at a deeper level. That your purpose, because for me, I'm sorry, and I'm not knocking anybody who just is really good at making money, because that's a great skill and that creates a lot of abundance for a lot of employees and a lot of people in their lives, and that's a good thing. And there's not absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that a lot of people have a calling for service that is it's an unscratched itch for many people. I know it was for me. And I felt it like a distant tug, it was just not quite present in my conscious mind, but it was there. And then when somebody helped me connect it, and I went, despite being like, why am I doing this? And I went over the first time and I did that work. And it just, boom, took on a life of its own, like we were talking about earlier, right? And that was the heart transformation. And I think that I'm not unique. This has nothing to do with Sean Daly. This has to do with, I believe that I choose to believe that many people, the majority of people, have this desire to do that kind of work in their own unique way, to find a way to serve that's uniquely them, that is an expression of their unique talents and their heart and what means something to them, right? You always see people giving to charities or like celebrities or whoever it is, sports figures, being involved in charities that mean something to them. And that's wonderful because that's a great way to give. Right. That's a wonderful way to be in service to others, is where you really have a strong connection from your own childhood, from your own challenges, your own family challenges, health things, whatever it is. And so I just think that it's unfortunate in our society that we do have to work really hard to keep our noses above the waterline with money. Like most people are, it's very expensive to live in the United States right now. And I'm saying that from over the pond, right? Yeah, I was living in California. And so I think that, and listen, if you're a provider, or a co-provider in your family, you're swallowed. If you have kids, all that, you have very, very little time. And I think for a lot of people, it's a question of like, how can I possibly do this with so many obligations at work or in my own company and for my kids and all that? And it can be kind of difficult to imagine your way through it. But I think once somebody is able to do that in some small way, that's when everything changes. At least that's what's happening to us.
Well, and I like that idea because it doesn't have to be, big grandiose gestures of service. It can be small acts.
Yeah.
I also think that, I don't know. I believe that it's good for people to serve others. I think that it also is kind of, it pushes back into that individual, right? You feel better when you serve others. Everybody does. And I think that for you, though, what I'm so interested by is, Loving Home Ministries. It's a very intentional name. The word ministries is in it. I'm thinking, and maybe I'm wrong to assume that there's a Christian underpinning, a Christian belief underpinning to it. Is that true? And B, has that always been a part of your life?
No, it was not a part of my life. My parents were how do I put this? They were Catholics who ran away from the church because they were taught by nuns and Jesuits and had the rulers across the knuckles, like old school East Coast. They weren't the word God did not come up in my house during my entire life. I think I went to church for the first time with my friend who had a Catholic priest uncle, and we went for midnight mass in my senior year of high school for Christmas. Just like, hey, you want to come to mass with me? I'm like, okay, that'll be interesting. I've never been in a church before. So yeah, answer is no. I was a very late bloomer to my faith, and it happened very organically for me. It was not a scripted thing. It was a very sort of dynamic, like wow, out of the blue sort of thing. The evolution of my own faith in my life. But since that moment, that my life has changed completely in wonderful and weird and cool. It's been the greatest adventure of my life. Like businesses, even though my wife is my best friend and we have the most amazing relationship, it's been the adventure of my life has been that, and it's been it's part of the reason I'm in France right now. There's been I've been on a magic carpet ride. I don't even know how to put it, a crazy roller coaster ever since it's happened. But the coolest part about it is it doesn't feel chaotic and out of control, despite that sort of metaphor I'm drawing. It has felt
Hmm.
very controlled by not by me, where I'm starting to tune into, for me, my higher power and what basically being obedient to things. And you know what, I actually say it this way. My wife and I have both had this experience of we're following the breadcrumbs. That's how we say it. We're not the
Interesting.
we're not the ones putting the breadcrumbs in front of us. We're just being obedient to, hey, there's a next step. Hey, there's a next step. Because with any of
Right.
this, we don't know what we're doing. We never did. We barnstormed
Shh.
that. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. We have no idea what we're
We
doing.
have no idea what we're doing. But I'm used to that because I've been barnstorming startups for 37 years. But it's like, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it's okay because we're gonna figure it out. And
Right.
we have some really strong
Right.
help in our corner to do that. So
Hmm.
that's been the fun part about this is that I mean, if I could, maybe if I have time, Chris, I could tell you just this very summarized version to give you just because I'm really not doing it justice when I talk about this story.
Please do. Please
Okay,
do.
so
Time
I
is your
would,
friend. Remember, you're an entrepreneur. You create your own time.
so thank you. I like that. So I went to a marketing sort of be a marketing guy interview for somebody that wanted to hire me back in I think it was 2019 or so, and they were a local company in California, and they were doing drug and alcohol rehab, but they had a bunch of thrift stores throughout that town. They were using it to monetize, and they had program. They were basically at an 80% addict recovery rate versus the national average of 8, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
And they said, "We love what you're doing with marketing, and we want to hire you, but we want you to come and be in our building. Like, can we rent you an office here?" Because I was working from home at the time. And they said, "We want you to rent an office here. You don't even have to pay rent. Just how about you train our program attendees who are going through the drug and alcohol rehab on marketing stuff?" And I thought, like, that's cool. I'm down. That's great. You know?
Yeah.
So, and my wife was like, "I'm ready for you to be out of the house for a while. That's cool. We can like appreciate each
Hmm.
other more." So, we had a joke, we had a laugh about that. But so yeah, so I did that, and then lo and behold, these guys were really. It reminds me of the the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God. That's how these people were. Like they were
That's
just
awesome.
on fire. They were building businesses left and right, graduating program attendees and having them run the businesses for the first time, to have stable jobs and even be entrepreneurs. And they had the thrift stores, and they were just doing all these great things. But I noticed at some point that it was a husband and wife. The husband was coming back with like he had bleary like red eyes, like literally like taking red eye flights overseas. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I've been going to Africa because we ship our clothing over there, the extra clothing from the thrift stores that don't sell, and donating it, but they're charging us $15,000 a shipping container. So I'm going to start an NGO over there. Or that's what I'm working on, so that we don't have to pay these exorbitant fees, and we can send the clothes over cheaply." I'm like, "Okay, that's interesting." So then he said, "But one day I showed up. I'm not going to tell his whole story, but one day he was kind of he had handlers over there. They were kind of like doing the dog and pony show in Nairobi, and he was frustrated. He didn't like that. He wanted it to be more jazz, or yeah, he felt like he was kind of getting worked, and he just didn't like the way it was going. So he like took off from the group and walked down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and he ends up at this orphanage at a blue door, and they let him in, and they're like, "Oh, hi," and they have visitors. So he's like visits with the kids, and he finds out that the elder siblings of a woman who founded the home are the ones running it, and not very well. Speaking of not knowing what they're doing, they're basically, unconsciously incompetent at doing what they're doing, running this
Yeah.
home. But they have wonderful kids, and he's like, "I want to come in here and run this place." So he's like, "Where's your mom?" They're like, "Well, she's sick." He's like, "Okay, well, where is she?" And she's in California. She was in Marin County, 25 minutes from where he was.
Wow.
So he goes back. He gets them to give him her information. They reluctantly did this because he's a Mzungu. It's like you don't trust the Mzungu. What's going on here with this guy? Mzungu is what they call
Right.
white foreigners. And so he goes back. He goes to her house. She's on her deathbed, by the way, in Marin. She's only has days to live. And she says, "Oh, Michael." He walks in the room. He's never met her. "Oh, Michael, God told me you were coming." And she signed over the orphanage to him.
No.
Yeah, it's a true story. She signs over the
I
orphanage.
love it. I love it. It's such a wonderful story, Sean, and it seems improbable and implausible, but stories like that exist all over the place. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens.
I'm in a conference room eating lunch with this guy, listening to the story, just going, what is happening here? And so he tells me the story, and the long story short with them is that they took that place over, they improved it. All of those people still have their jobs. They took it to another level, to say the least. And he started the third largest tomato farming operation in the country,
Oh
and
my God.
employed these people. Oh yeah, he did great things, and I really admire him for what he did. But anyway, in the middle of this, back to the conference room having lunch, he's like, our son, one of our sons was going through some really big difficulties in his lifetime. And he said, "Well, why don't you bring your son and we're going to build a basketball court for them. They don't have anything to do there. It's like it's just like nothing to do in the courtyard. So we want to build a basketball court." And I was like, that doesn't fit into my life or my work schedule at all. But I felt I felt the urge to say yes irrationally, and then I had to explain it to my wife after. I'm like, I just said
Right.
yes to him, and but she's like, you think our son's gonna go? And I'm like, no, I don't even know why I would think that. And I asked him, and he did, and I would have bet a lot of money that he would not have said yes, or even I would have thought he would have laughed at me.
But he needed that, right? If you said he was going through a hard time, kids need these life preservers, right? Or they need something that they know they need to get out of where they were. And what a beautiful opportunity you gave him to make that choice. It's great.
Yeah, and Michael really gave that to us. So we went, and it was life changing. I watched him smile for the first time in 2 years, like really smile. Taught the kids how to play chess. Was just hanging out with the team. But anyway, it was completely transformative, and just watching that was such a privilege, and it was transformative for me. But something interesting happened: COVID. And during COVID, these guys were very sort of thumb their nose at the man. They were told to shut down the operations and the thrift stores, and they kept opening them because they're very rebellious types. And eventually, the county was fining them and putting like token arresting them, and it was just a mess. And they just said, "Screw California, we're out." And they went to Florida overnight. They literally like packed up and just left the entire state. And they left everybody behind. So we were contributing towards that operation financially and in other ways. And so it got kind of ripped out of our lives and a lot of other people's lives. And they've continued on with it. But it's okay. I don't have hard feelings towards them because I know why they did what they did. But for us, we just started to do the service work with them. And it was a big part of my life. And it was gone like in an instant. And so I was like, wow, I'd really like to do that work again. I was really sad. So my wife and we prayed about it. We were just like, Heavenly Father, I hope that we can do this kind of work again sometime. We really love Kenya. We fell in love with Kenya. We really love to do that. And blah, blah. So put that out there. And then I'm playing golf a week later, and my buddies had to leave after 9 holes. On the back 9, I get a group of 2 guys who it turns out are from Nairobi. And one of them was like, "Oh, I'm the guy who met Michael. You know Michael? I'm the one who met him the first time he came over." I'm like,
love it.
What is happening? This is a week later. And he's like, we had fun. He said, "Let's play again sometime." So we played again. I think it was the next week. And he said, "Hey, I remember what you were saying about what happened with the home and everything, and that you were looking for maybe to support another home." He goes, "My friend Elizabeth, who lives in Nairobi, met some people at home and would love to introduce you to them. She just met them, but she went over and took photos and stuff, and so she can send that to you so you can kind of see what's going on over there." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." So we looked at the photos and everything, and we had like an introduction letter between us, and so we set up. But so now we're locked down in COVID. Here's the backdrop. This looks like a potential interesting organization. It's well run by this husband and wife that are 2 pastors, but I don't know them from Adam, and I don't, I don't know if this is a scam. Who are these people? What's happening here? And it's like, and we can't go anywhere. We're locked down in COVID. So we were like, well, so I was like, we need somebody to vet these guys. But it has to be somebody that's already over there, and we don't know anybody else over there. And I don't know how this is going to happen, but we prayed about it. So on Facebook, about
Hmm.
48 hours later, somebody's in a marketing group says, "What's your side hustle?" And people are like, "I do drop shipping. I do this." And I put on there, my wife and I co-support an orphanage in Nairobi, which I was talking about, the old one. And this guy messages me, or he responds in a comment a couple hours later, "Hey, my name's Kevin. I was orphaned as a teenager in Nairobi, and my wife and I, she's a social worker. We'd love to hear what you're doing and help you in any way we can." I'm like, okay.
You put stuff out there and the universe responds.
Boom. Zoom call that weekend. These people are good friends to this day. They went over, they vetted it. They're like, these people are amazing. They are living with these kids. It's their life's work. They're giving everything they have, but they are 3 months in arrears because of COVID, and they can't raise money at the church to support the kids like they used to because of the shutdown. The shutdown in Kenya was even worse than the United States. It was absolute shutdown. Like nobody could do anything. So they were on the verge of being evicted. 98 kids at that point, 95, 98
Oh
kids.
my God.
And so
What a disaster.
And so but you know what? We were like, this is it. We're going to support these guys. And we went all in and we took over, got them out of arrears and all the stuff. But, and we've worked with them ever since. And we go over there like 3 times a year. They're amazing people. We're just so glad it all happened. And but it was just mind blowing. Like, and I just, again, that's the breadcrumb thing. We just kept going, okay, all we have to do is just keep turning over the stone, just keep walking forward, because it's nothing about us, right? This was just, follow the breadcrumbs, right?
We'll be right back. Yeah, following those breadcrumbs. I love that. That's a beautiful visual of living a life where some people say, well, you have to plan. This is your plan. This is your 3-year plan. This is your 5-year plan. You've got to plan this and plan that. And we're going to check off this and check off that. Very different living than saying, I'm going to be open and sensitive. And, I think, and I might be wrong, but the definition of serendipity is an opportunity and awareness. It doesn't happen if you're not aware. Opportunities around us all the time, right? You just have to be aware and open. And I think putting these energies out there of, these are the things that I'm hoping to do, and these are the things I'm hoping to do for others. And if it comes, that's great. But, being open to, that's the breadcrumb, because it's not enough, Sean, to follow the breadcrumb. You have to find the breadcrumb. You have to be aware and open and looking for the breadcrumb, right? If your head is down and you're walking forward, you're not going to see a breadcrumb off to your right. But if you're up and your eyes are open, and your senses are open,
that's so important.
Like,
I'm really glad you said that,
there's a breadcrumb over there.
That is it. It's asking for the breadcrumb to be there in the first place. It's the intention of saying, I want this to happen, and I'm willing it. I want it. My intentions are there. My awareness and focus is on it. And then you see it, and then the opportunity happens. So there has to be a will, I think. And whether somebody listening to this believes in higher power or not, it's really not important, because this is about being in service to other human beings. And I believe, I personally do believe there is. Before it was a cloudy, sort of a little bit abstract thing for me at times. It became crystal clear, and my faith was really strengthened by the way that I watched every single thing related to this particular home it was like it had just a golden light shining on it. Anything that was asked for it was given instantly, without hesitation, in a way I have never since witnessed in my life. The last story I'm going to tell about that was, when we got into it, we got them out of arrears, but they had a lot of other needs. They had nothing to cook on. They were cooking over a barrel, and they really needed like a 4-plate cooker that's like a wood-fired cooker, and some other things. They had no school uniforms for the kids. You can't go to school in Kenya unless you have books and uniforms, and some other really like core needs. And so we had a list of additional expenses that were required to get them out of like Maslow's lower hierarchy of needs. And so we were like, wow, this is more money than we're comfortable with personally right now, because we're already committed to the other stuff. And so, and this is before, by the way, we had founded the 501c3. We were just doing this personally. And so, so there was a number There was a fairly large number that was needed for these basic needs. And I was in a fantasy football league with my brother. And
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you, this is like coming from out of space. This stuff. Shut the front door. This dude who
Shut
I
the
knew him.
front door.
I'll just say
Come
G is
on.
his first letter sort of thing. This guy's a professional gambler. And I never talked to him about anything other than whatever like QB1 in our fantasy league, whatever. And so he like said, "Hey, I heard you just went to Kenya." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What were you doing over there?" And this is very uncharacteristic. Again, never talked to this guy about anything other than football. I sent him some photos of we were here, and he sends me without asking. He Venmos me the exact amount of money that we needed for this. I never asked for money, never discussed money. He sent it was actually plus $300. It was the amount of money plus $300, and I'm just like, what? He's like, oh, and he didn't even say anything about it. He was just like, yeah,
Oh
I
my
hope that helps.
God.
And I'm just like, what is happening here? So it was.
Ah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I've heard stories. A friend of mine had a story like this where he needed an operation, and suddenly through his workplace they have like a sales lottery
Wow.
and he got the exact amount from the sales lottery, right? It just stuff like that happens. So stuff with your friend sending you this exact amount that you need. Um, I have to believe that whatever your faith journey is, or whatever anybody's faith journey is, there's been enough evidence of these kinds of energy cycles that flow out and flow in and that connect. There's an interesting book, and it basically talks about the accidents of the world, and that there's no quote unquote fate, there's no predictability, everything is random, everything's chance. But there's enough, I
Yeah.
think, and you could say
Yeah.
enough empirical evidence that that's not true, right? The energies of connectivity between people and intention and will and purpose sometimes make things happen, and that's why we use the phrase miracle, because it doesn't make sense why it happens. But then when you look back and
Yeah.
think about all the intentionality, it makes complete sense that would happen. Like, it's natural that your fantasy football gambling guy would
Yeah.
just Venmo you the money,
Yeah,
because
and I
that's
do
how
not
this shit
pretend to.
works,
I'm
right?
simply
That's how it
reporting the news as
rolls.
an observer, but I don't pretend to know how it works. But I will give advice. I have practical advice for anybody who's saying, I too would like to have something like that happen. I would just simply say with a sincere heart, and it doesn't matter who how you put it out there, universe, whatever you name, if you have God, even if you don't believe in God, whatever it is, but if you were just to really just put out like this volition, this like sincere volition that I want to insert you here, right? I want to serve these types of people, or I want to find my way to serve, or whatever it is, and I really, really want this. If you just really put that out there very strongly in whatever form that makes sense for you, I would say just buckle up, because my experience is some things are going to happen.
Just might happen. That is a wonderful way to close this conversation. That is just
Thank you.
fantastic. Man, thank you so much, Sean. So one question that I always ask uh, is, who is someone that you know that I don't know
Well, it's funny because you're
that
about
I
to
should
meet
know?
him. I think we have a call coming up with him, so you're going to meet him. My friend Zach. I think he would be a cool
Okay,
guy for you
very
to meet.
good.
So we'll be introducing. Should I say his full name on here? I didn't know. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's fine. I can't wait to meet. I can't wait to meet Zach. That's fantastic. Well, you have been an absolute delight and an inspiration, Sean. I'm so grateful for you for taking the time and to kind of share your story and your journey with us. And hopefully we can do this again in a bit to give us an update of what's happening with all the things that you're doing, and curious about how it plays out with your children and the adventures that your daughter's having here. It's just a
Yeah.
wonderful
Thank you.
experience for you.
Anytime. I appreciate you having me on, and be happy to come back and do an update. So thanks again for the opportunity. You too.
Thank you. Have a great day. Well, all right, Sean Daly. Man, what a remarkable way to think about life, and what a remarkable way to think about how to live a life moving on in the later stages of your ages, right? A lot of people are doing different things in their 40s and 50s. And here he is with his wife, moving literally halfway around the world and having an experience with their youngest daughter. But also importantly, looking for those breadcrumbs, or not even looking for the breadcrumbs. It's like being aware of the breadcrumbs. I think, definition of serendipity is when like a chance happens on somebody, but they're aware of the chance that's there. You've got to get to your mindset first of being aware. So what did we learn from Sean? Well, I learned to be more aware of your intentions and how you want to live, and to pay attention to the clues that lead your life forward in a way that maybe you didn't expect, but maybe you always wanted. He's following the breadcrumbs that are being delivered for him. Now, you might not believe in a higher power. You might think that it's just chance. I don't know. This stuff happens all the time. And it often happens to the people who are looking around and being aware of their next step, a real intentional way of living and letting the world and universe reveal the next steps to fulfill that intention. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I'd love you to be a guest. Every man has a good story to share, and we can all learn from your stories. So visit menfolkjourneys.com and you can book a conversation. I make it comfortable, I make it easy, make it a place that you can go so we can all learn from what you are doing, so we can all get better ourselves. Again, visit menfolkjourneys.com, book a conversation. I'd love to have a yik yak with you. Thank you for listening. Word bid Filarid.